stepmother who decapitates her stepson, cooks his body, and feeds it to his unsuspecting father. The boy's sister buries his bones under a juniper tree, and from the tree the boy returns as a vengeful spirit, transforming into a bird and dropping a millstone on his stepmother, crushing her to death. 7. The Girl Without Hands, a story of betrayal and survival. In this disturbing fairy tale, a poor man accidentally sells his daughter to the devil in exchange for wealth. When she resists the devil's temptations, her own father chops off her hands to fulfill the bargain. Eventually, she escapes, gains magical silver hands, and finds a happier fate, but not before enduring unimaginable suffering. Why were these stories so disturbing? Fairy tales weren't just for children. They were warnings, morality lessons, and sometimes outright horror stories meant to instill fear and obedience. Over time, many of them were altered, softened, or rewritten to make them more acceptable. Which of these dark fairy tales shocked you the most? Want to uncover more forgotten stories and chilling legends? Subscribe now and dive into the forgotten history of fairy tales. Welcome back, lore hunters. Tonight I'm unwrapping some myths that slip through the cracks of pop culture, tales so rich you could live in them for weeks. Let the veils fall. Old Phaon hauled passengers between Lesbos and Asia Minor in a skiff patched more than a beggar's coat. One dusk, he carried an aged woman for free when storms canceled the rich man's coin. She touched his wrist, her skin warmed like sunrise. That crone revealed herself as Aphrodite. Payment: an alabaster jar of rose-scented balm. Phaon rubbed a dab on his temples. Waves reflected a new face, jaw sharp, curls ink black. Word of the god-veined ferryman blitzed across isles. Queens queued for night voyages. Fame fed on humility until none was left. Phaon mocked old lovers, hiked his fares, painted his hull with gold leaf. Aphrodite, hearing temple incense now dedicated to Phaon instead of herself, revisited, this time as a scarred sailor claiming poverty. Rebuked, she cursed the balm to invert. Every admiring gaze would now age him a year. By next moon, the once idol looked like driftwood. He vanished, some say into the strait's whirlpool, others into a hermit cave. Poets still swear his ghostly skiff appears on starless nights. If you board, you arrive at dawn a decade older, pockets full of rose petals that rot before noon. Queen Althea of Calydon screamed through her labor as the hearth fire hissed. From the embers, a coal spat out, a single firebrand the length of a dagger. The fates appeared, scissors glinting. Lachesis measured the newborn's life against that coal. Clotho whispered, "When the wood is ash, the boy is dust." Althea snatched the brand, quenched it in a silver urn, and hid it under her bed. The baby, Meleager, grew into a spear god in the training yard. None but his mother guessed why storms seemed to pause for him. Years later, Artemis loosed a boar monstrous as a siege tower to punish King Oeneus for a skipped sacrifice. Hunters from every Greek polis gathered. Meleager led, eyes bright as forge fire. Among the heroes strode Atalanta, swift, lethal, and female, an affront to the older princes. In the thicket, Atalanta's arrow struck first blood. Meleager's spear finished the beast. He offered her the pelt. Male egos erupted. Two of Meleager's uncles drew blades. Meleager defended the huntress, slaying his own kin. Word sprinted ahead of him to the palace. Althea collapsed at news her brothers lay dead by her son's hand. Grief wrestled prophecy in her chest. Shaking, she fetched the firebrand, lit a torch, and held both over the brazier. Her love warred her rage for 9 heartbeats. On the 10th, she let the wood slip. Miles away, Meleager felt his marrow ignite. He dropped mid-stride, armor ringing like a funeral bell. At the palace hearth, the brand hissed its last and fell to gray powder. Althea watched the flakes swirl, then walked into the flames herself. In Caledon, they still say, "Whatever a mother births, her fire can reclaim." Young Cyparissus roamed Chios with a bronze shepherd's crook taller than himself. Apollo, idling in mortal disguise, gifted the boy a tame stag crowned with ivory antlers. It followed him like sunrise follows dawn. One blistering noon, flies tormented the stag. Cyparissus, meaning only mercy, aimed his javelin to shoo them. The tip glanced off a stone, pierced soft flank. The deer collapsed, breath misting blood. Cyparissus dropped beside it, sobs carving caverns in his throat. Apollo arrived to heal, lyre weeping gold notes. But the boy refused salvation for himself. He begged, "Give me a grief that never dries, so I remember him forever." Clouds boiled violet. The ground drank color from his sandals upward. Where Cyparissus knelt now stands the first cypress, trunk straight as a spear of mourning, sap weeping resin tears. Greeks plant the tree in graveyards because its roots plunge only downward, never sideways, like a grief that refuses distraction. On summer nights, hunters claim the wind through cypress needles sounds like antlers brushing the sky. Athens hailed Cephalus and Procris as couple of the century. He an expert hunter, she a devotee of Artemis. As wedding gift, the goddess sent two marvels: Lalaps, a hound fated to catch any quarry, and a spear destined never to miss. One morning, Cephalus rested from the chase and sang to the breeze, calling it Nephele, sweet comfort. The dawn goddess Eos, eavesdropping, snatched him skyward, offering immortality. He pined for Procris. Eos scoffed, "She'll betray you." Suspicion slid under his skin like splintered arrow reeds. Cephalus returned in disguise, bribing servants to hint Procris had strayed. At twilight, she arrived in the woods, masked, to spy on him first. Hearing rustle, Cephalus loosed the divine spear toward the sound. It cannot miss. The mask tore away, Procris's eyes wide as shattering glass. She fell against his chest, whispering only, "The breeze, remember?" Cephalus buried her on Mount Hymettus, pinned the fatal spear beside the grave, and leashed Laiolaps there eternally. Some nights, hikers see a spectral dog chase a phantom hare in circles that never close, while a jealous wind mutters the name Nephele through the pines. Poor farmer Ligdus told his pregnant wife, if the child is female, exposure must follow. Dowries ruin paupers. Desperate Telethusa prayed to Isis. The goddess appeared, golden-winged. Bear the child, raise her as son. Baby Iphis arrived. They bound her chest, taught her spearcraft, named her heir. At 13, Iphis was betrothed to radiant Ianthe, who adored her future husband. Iphis loved her too, but carried a secret that tore her apart. Nights she begged Isis, either unmake love or unmake lie. Eve of the wedding, Iphis roamed the temple till exhaustion. At midnight, statue eyes flashed, muscle quaked under skin, voice dropped like falling figs. When dawn trumpets blew, Iphis emerged, broad-shouldered, jaw square, still wearing mother's hopes, but now truth-shaped. Ceremony erupted in double amazement. A father spared from murder, a bride gaining the groom her heart already knew, a city given a living parable that gods can edit, flesh the way poets edit verse. On anniversaries, Crete's couples exchange braided veils, symbol that love may bend rules when petitioned with courage. Satyr-blooded Ampelus dazzled Dionysus, youth swagger, curls like grape tendrils. He rode a bull through vineyards, boasting he was braver than the god. Dionysus, half teasing, half testing, sent a gadfly. The bull bucked. Ampelus flew, spine meeting earth with a wet crack. Thunderclouds curdled purple. Grief-stricken, the god plucked the corpse's heartbeat, planted it. From ribs sprouted twisting vines, from fingers curling shoots. First, grapes. He fermented their juice with tears, naming the wine Ampelosios, the taste of regret. Every toast pours a little myth, sweetness chased by sting. Drink deep and you repeat the boy's brag, but this time, hopefully, know when to dismount. On the gray docks of Anthedon, a lone fisherman named Glaucus noticed something odd. Every fish he caught leapt back into the sea after flopping across a patch of wild green herbs. His curiosity, half hunger, half science, won. He tasted one leaf. A heartbeat later, his pulse throttled like a war drum. Gills tore open on his neck. Terrified, he dove overboard and discovered he could breathe brine like air. In the midnight blue below, sea deities gathered, nereids swirling like living lace, old Phorcys with crab-shell crown. They greeted the newcomer, then forced a cup of ichor on him. Drink, forget the shore. Visions blitzed his skull, shipwrecks yet to come, lovers yet to drown. Prophecy is a toxin that never metabolizes. Glaucus tried to surface, to hug his aging mother, but every wave slapped him back. Barnacles crusted over his old rowing calluses. He practiced his new craft instead, whispering tides to sailors, trading secrets for offerings of bronze and bread that sank unreachable. Legend says if you stare into rough surf and hear your own name, it's Glaucus warning you to turn home. Ignore him, and you join his choir. Another voice lost to the deep. In Attica ruled Periphas, so just that subjects built temples to him, not Zeus. Offerings piled higher than to Olympus. Flattery sharpens divine talons. Thunderhead over the palace. As lightning coiled to strike, Apollo intervened. Spare the righteous, punish the praise. Zeus relented, halfway. Before the court's eyes, Periphas's flesh rippled into plumage, arms broadened into storm-breaker wings. His queen begged accompaniment, became an osprey. Throne room glittered with abandoned gold. Zeus decreed the new eagle his personal herald. Immortal, hungry for serpents of hubris. Every lightning flash, tradition holds Periphas scouts ahead, making sure no mortal altars bear the wrong name again. Arcadian huntress Callisto pledged lifelong virginity to Artemis. Oaths echo loudest in forest silence. Zeus, disguised as Artemis, tricked Callisto when her secret pregnancy showed. The real goddess burned with double fury, betrayed and impersonated. Artemis transformed the girl into a shaggy bear. Callisto's newborn, Arcus, left human. Years later, on a hunt, Arcus drew bow at the lunging bear, unaware it was his mother. Zeus intervened, flinging both into the sky as Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. They circle Polaris forever, never touching, an eternal near miss engraved in stars. Notice how each story spins one spindle. Desire collides with destiny, and form shatters. Greek myth isn't merely about gods showing off, it's about limits. And the instant you cross them, reality melts and recools into shapes that remember the crime. Which of tonight's transformations branded you hardest? Firebrand, spear, cypress, rose curse, or braided veil? Write its name in the comments, but add one line. If this myth were my life lesson, I'd finish the sentence. Best confession gets read on next episode. Immortal as any Greek hero. Slap that like if you felt the heat of Meleager's log or the sea spray of Phaon's oars. Subscribe and ring the bell so the algorithm threads your name into our next tapestry. Remember, stories are sparks. Hold them too lightly and they fade. Grip them too hard and they burn. Find your balance. See you in the weave. Tonight you'll meet the nymph whose beauty made Hades plant a forest in her image, a lover who weaponized an apple to hack a goddess's marriage laws, a king who may have raised the dragon that ate his island, a prophet who lived 7 years as each sex and paid with his eyes, and a royal couple whose wrecked ship still calms the winter seas. 5 deep-cut myths, none repeated from previous episodes. Stick around. The last scene explains why every item you just saw is really the same warning. Luce, daughter of Oceanus, shimmered like morning on still water. Hades saw her bathing on the Styx's shore and felt the ache of something that might have been love, if gods knew limits. He swept her into his shadowy chariot. In the underworld, things don't rot the way they should, they transform. When Luce's mortal bloom began to fade, Hades panicked. Unable to bear her disappearing, he offered the only gift he understood, immortality as landscape. He touched her hair. It stiffened into bark the color of moon-bleached bone. Leaves burst silver as coin flip flashes. Luce the woman became Luce the white poplar, blazing at the center of Elysium. Dead heroes rest beneath her, weaving garlands from her two-toned leaves. Dark one side, pale the other, to remind them that joy and grief always grow on the same branch. The Cercopes, twin dwarf tricksters Passalus and Acarus, live by trolling. They steal Heracles' bow and club, giggling about how the hero's butt is black as a kettle from soot. Heracles wakes, grabs both by the ankles, slings them over a pole like squirming fish, and marches toward the city to sell them. Dangling upside down, blood rushing to their heads, the twins can't stop roasting him. Even Heracles, no stranger to rage, breaks into reluctant laughter. But Zeus, hearing their unfiltered comedy, decides the world needs more mischief. He transforms them into the first monkeys, bodies still small, faces still grinning, forever swinging by what once bound them, their own tails. Sailors claim the Cercopes occasionally regain speech during eclipses, whispering new insults at any heroic statue within earshot. King Lycurgus hated surprises. When the brand new god Dionysus marched through Thrace with drums, wine, and ecstatic maenads, Lycurgus saw a security threat. He banned viticulture, arrested Bacchic followers, even ordered his soldiers to whip the vines until they confessed their treason. Dionysus escaped into sea foam, but vengeance fermented quietly. First, the king's barley crops twisted into miniature grape clusters. Then, every cup in the palace turned to wine, no matter what was poured. Finally, Lycurgus woke screaming. Vines were sprouting from his own feet, snaking up his calves, pinning him to the palace floor. He hacked at them only to realize he was slicing his own flesh. The vines were his veins. Driven mad, he swung an axe at what he thought were tendrils on an oak and beheaded his heir. The gods let him blister in that guilt until locals, terrified, bound him and hurled him into Mount Pangaion's man-eating cave. The vines retracted, but his screams never did. Acontius, a handsome nobody from Chios, spots rich girl Sidipe under the temple colonnade. He can't speak to her, class gap miles wide, but he can exploit Olympus's fine print. He scratches on an apple. I swear by Artemis to marry Acontius. He rolls it to her sandal. She idly picks it up and reads the words aloud, which in Artemis's precinct equals a binding oath. Sidipe leaves, confused, but every time her father arranges a proper fiancé, she collapses with fever, so savage priests fear plague. The oracle digs through the divine TOS and finds the hitch. She's already sworn. When Sidipe finally weds Acontius, the fevers vanish. Artemis shows up, not angry but amused, honoring the couple with everlasting fidelity in exchange for the clever tribute. Moral: speak casually under a goddess's roof and the contract is in ink you can't see. Long before the Trojan War, the island had no king. only scattered fishermen and goats. Then a stranger arrived, Cycreus, towering, scarred, carrying a bronze spear notched with unknown runes. He spoke little, ate alone, but worked miracles. He dug cisterns where springs burst overnight, charmed a wild stallion into kneeling, and once, locals swear, stood barefoot in a ring of fire to prove courage to the storm god. By year's end, the islanders begged him to rule. They didn't know he walked with a secret. He dreamt every night of fire-scaled dragons devouring his childhood village, and woke with soot under his nails, though no hearth burned nearby. Months after his coronation, goats began disappearing. Nets came up shredded as if bitten by iron teeth. One dusk, a shepherd stumbled into the agora, eyes wide, clutching a bronze scale the size of a dinner plate, edges smoking. He'd found it at the mouth of a cave where the mountain met the sea. Cycreus said nothing, only studied the scale under torchlight. It matched the color of the runes on his spear. That night, villagers saw their king ride alone toward the cave. From cliffs, they watched the torchlight vanish into the maw. Minutes stretched into hours. Then, roaring deep enough to quake wine jars on kitchen shelves, flame burst from the cave mouth. Shadows of two giants, one man, one serpent, wrestled on the cave wall like monstrous puppet theater. At dawn, silence. Cycreus emerged, armor warped, spearhead glowing red. Behind him dragged the colossal corpse of a sea dragon, neck twisted, fangs snapped, eyes like boiled copper. The island erupted in praise. They crowned him with laurel and called him Draken Soter, Dragon's Savior. Yet some noticed his smile was hollow, as if slaying the beast had lanced a boil he secretly cherished. After the triumph feast, Cycreus changed. He paced battlements at midnight, muttering in a guttural tongue. His bathwater steamed black. Servants insisted the steam coiled like a serpent before dissolving. One harvest festival, a child accidentally spilled wine on his boots. Cycreus roared, eyes flashing ember orange, and the boy swore he saw scales ripple under the king's skin. Rumors spread. Had the battle fused man and monster? Or darker, had Cycreus never slain the dragon at all? Had he absorbed it? When storms flattened olive groves and fishermen found their nets burnt as though by underwater fire, the islanders panicked. They begged Eurystheus of Athens to intervene. The hero sailed with 50 hoplites, each carrying asbestos-soaked nets and mirrored shields to confuse reptilian eyes. But at the gate they met not a beast, only their king, bare-chested, spear discarded, arms raised. Cycreus confessed. The dragon's fury had leaked into him. He'd battled it outside and now battled it within, losing ground each night. "Bind me or burn me," he said. Eurystheus chose mercy darker than execution, exile. He ferried Cycreus to Eleusis, gift-wrapping the cursed king for the goddess Demeter, whose own grief could understand corrupted power. Demeter accepted, appointing Cycreus as guardian of her holy processions, his inner fire now repurposed to ward off all lesser threats. As Cycreus's ship slipped away, islanders swore the shoreline hissed, not from waves, but from a dragon's whisper receding with its unwilling host. Salamis kept the dragon's bronze scales nailed above city gates for centuries, tarnished mirrors reminding every leader, "Conquer your monsters, yes, but never wear their skins. Power taken from terror carries terror's seed. When rage becomes crown, abdication may be salvation." Young hunter Tiresias strikes the snakes with his staff. Hera curses him into a woman for 7 years. He marries, bears children, learns the loom songs of grief men never hear. 7 winters later, he meets the serpents again, carefully steps over them, spell breaks. He's male once more. Later, Zeus and Hera bicker. Who enjoys love more, man or woman? They drag Tiresias in as data point. He sides with Zeus. Women feel 9 times the pleasure. Hera, furious, blinds him. Zeus, guilt-struck, gifts prophecy and a lifespan of 7 generations. Thus, the greatest seer of Thebes walks the tightrope of fate without eyesight, yet clearer vision than any living soul. It's said he chuckled on his deathbed. Blind, I've seen 2 worlds, inside and out. King Ceyx sails to consult an oracle. Wife Alcyone prays he waits for calmer weather. He doesn't. Zeus, annoyed that Ceyx invoked him too often in casual oaths, hurls a thunderstorm that swallows the ship. Ceyx's spirit, soaked and shivering, begs Iris to carry a goodbye. Sleep god Morpheus impersonates Ceyx's drowned corpse in Alcyone's dream. She wakes screaming, runs to the surf. There's the real body, ghost pale in foam. In raw despair, she leaps after him. The gods, pierced by this double plunge, morph the lovers mid-air into halcyon birds, kingfishers with royal blue backs. To let their floating nest survive, Zeus stills the winter seas for 14 days every January. Sailors call it the halcyon days, when storms bank their rage and even grief takes a coffee break. Which transformation slapped hardest? Tree, oath, dragon, gender shift, or bird? Hit the comments. Smash like. If you'll think twice before reading random fruit out loud, subscribe for next week's plunge into the 3 mortals who blackmailed the fates. And ring that bell. Unlike Zeus's thunder, it won't roast you for imposter syndrome. See you in the halcyon calm. Ask most people about Greek myth and you get 12 labors, a Gorgon's haircut, or a fire thief nailed to a cliff. Tonight we leave the doom scroll and open the side door. Some lesser-known legends where the gods give instead of take. Or something you love. Silence the group chat, because each tale rolls out in 4 acts, exactly like a Netflix mini-EP. First jar on the left, a polished grain of barley the size of a thumbnail. Let's pry it open. Eleusis, dusk. Fields are dust. Demeter still mourns Persephone. Villagers starve, except Triptolemus, teen son of King Celeus, who offers the goddess barley porridge cooked from his final handful of grain. Moved, Demeter turns her grief to gratitude and hands him a leather pouch of enchanted seed. Demeter's next gift is wilder, a bronze chariot yoked to 2 serpents the size of river dolphins. They hiss, but obey her touch. Fly, she tells Triptolemus, and sow the earth. He launches like steam from a kettle, dragons beating emerald wings over seas and mountains, seed flitting from his fist, taking root the instant it kisses dirt. Triptolemus lands in Scythia, demonstrates plowing, and shares bread hotter than sunrise. Their ruler Lincus smiles, then creeps into the guest hut with a dagger, planning to steal credit. Demeter's serpents coil awake, eyes phosphorescent. Steel meets scale. The goddess materializes and, with a snap, turns Lincus into the first lynx, forever stalking fields he can never harvest. Triptolemus lifts off again, safer and wiser. Dragons spiraling like living irrigation lines. Everywhere wheat sprouts, famine folds, and villages invent words for thank you. When he finally parks the chariot in Eleusis, Demeter names him patron of farmers and slots a constellation, the sower, above the autumn sky. Rural Greeks still claim that seeing twin shooting stars at harvest means Triptolemus's dragons are checking yields. In Achaean ripes, stonemason Mycilus woke 3 nights running to the same dream. Hercules, lion skin reeking of cedar smoke, beckoned him across the sea to the pebble-dappled waters of Asar. Leaving one's birthplace was illegal, but divine persistence outweighs city ordinances. Neighbors dragged him before the civic tribunal. Verdicts were cast with white, acquit, and black, condemn, pebbles dropped into an urn. Mycilus prayed under his breath. As judges emptied the urn, every stone, white and black alike, shone snow white. gasps. No law forbade miracle loopholes, so the council shrugged and released their suddenly blameless defendant. Mycilus sailed west. At Italy's heel, he found the river Asar flashing with pale cobbles, exact match to his dream. He also found an old burial mound dedicated to a local hero named Croton, once hospitable to Hercules himself. Prophecy clicked like a lock. He founded Croton on that spot, planting the first stone in the new city wall with his own calloused hands. 2 generations later, Croton would dominate Magna Graecia in athletics and medicine, home of Milo the wrestler and Pythagoras' school. Locals still tell tourists to pocket a white pebble for courage, Hercules' ancient thumbs up. On Crete, baby Zeus hides from Cronus inside the Idaean cave. A gentle goat, Amalthea, nurses him with milk so sweet it smells of thyme. Curate's warriors clash shields outside to drown infant cries. Toddler Zeus, already wrestling destiny, grabs Amalthea's horn during roughhousing. It snaps off. Horrified, he touches the broken horn and wills it to pour ambrosia and jewels, an apology in infinite supply. The horn becomes cornucopia, everlasting symbol of abundance. Amalthea is lifted to the stars as Capella, brightest goat in the sky. Every harvest festival, Greeks tip wine from a horn-shaped rhyton, so the cave child remembers. The practice survives today in the very shape of Thanksgiving centerpieces, because one young god learned that breaking something you love can birth generosity that never runs dry. Argos prepares a grand procession to Hera's temple 6 miles away. Oxen assigned to pull the gilded cart of priestess Sidip, aka Mor or Awor. Her sons, athletes Cleobus and Biton, lock eyes and shrug. We're the oxen today. They yoke themselves, veins corded, and drag the 2-ton cart under Mediterranean noon. Crowds scatter petals, sweat rains on marble road. At the temple steps, mother dismounts, trembling with pride. Sidippe prays, "Great Hera, grant my sons the best blessing a mortal can have." After sacrifice and feast, the exhausted brothers fall asleep in the sacred hall, smiles still ghosting their faces. They never wake. Peaceful exit at peak glory, Hera's idea of the highest gift. Argives commissioned life-size statues at Delphi, muscles forever flexed. Travelers note the serenity on stone brows, testament that sometimes a swift, dignified curtain call outranks long, ragged applause. Young Taurus, demigod son of Poseidon, pilots a skiff scouting for new colonies. Storm detaches rudder from reality. Mast snaps like uncooked spaghetti. Waves swallow everything but Taurus clinging to driftwood. Poseidon, scanning seafloor currents, flicks his trident. A dolphin larger than a rowboat rockets upward, scoops Taurus, and planes across the wine-dark sea like a living surfboard. At dawn, the dolphin deposits him on Italy's sunlit heel. Taurus climbs a bluff, sees fertile plains ribboned by a gentle river. He plants Poseidon's miniature bronze trident in the sand and declares a new polis. The colony, Tarentum, today's Taranto, mints coins of a boy riding a dolphin, trident aloft. Local fishermen still carve tiny dolphins on prows, tribute to the uncanny GPS system that once delivered a founder to the perfect harbor. Aphrodite and winged son Eros picnicked amid spring anemones, boasting who could gather the loveliest bouquet. With wings, Eros predictably stuffed his basket first. Enter Peristera, a mortal handmaid collecting herbs nearby. Seeing Aphrodite's crestfallen smile, she wordlessly tipped her own armful of blooms into the goddess's basket. Eros protested, "Rules breach." Aphrodite just laughed, victory fragrant in her arms. Jealousy and Cupid's arrows share barbs. Eros flicked one tiny dart and poof, Peristera shrank into downy white feathers. Aphrodite scooped up the bewildered bird, whispering apologies and protection. Peristera, now a dove, gained a new language of coos and cloud-high freedom. The goddess decreed doves sacred henceforth, harbingers of peace and liaisons for lovers. From Cyprus to Corinth, newlyweds release white doves, so their first horizon carries Peristera's gift. Help your friends win, and you may end up airborne, emblematic, and forever cherished by a goddess who remembers favors. Cretan teenager Epimenides entered a cave seeking a stray lamb. Cool air lulled him into a nap on soft moss. When he stepped back into sunlight, the lamb was a weather-bleached skull, and his town looked upgraded. He'd slept 57 years. Word of the time traveler raced to Athens, then reeling under plague and factional strife. They summoned Epimenides. He prescribed symbolic spring water baths for citizens and a cleansing of unjust murder cases, the world's first state-sanctioned amnesty. He also ringed the city with incense-burning altars to the unknown god, appeasing whichever deity felt snubbed. Within a year, the plague receded, civic tempers cooled. Grateful Athenians offered gold. Epimenides accepted only vines for his Cretan temple, proof that sleep had taught him value over price. Legends credit him with tweaking the Greek lunar calendar and penning riddling prophecies. Even today, Cretan shepherds warn drowsy companions. Nap too long in a sacred cave, you'll wake up a consultant. Aristaeus, son of Apollo and huntress Cyrene, loved tinkering. Olives here, cheese there. When shepherds complained of wild honey going rancid, Aristaeus studied bees like living alchemy. Nymph tutors taught smoke calming and linen veils. Soon, Aristaeus produced honey rumored to heal fevers. Even Olympians craved his combs. One blistering summer, disease wiped out his hives. Desperate, he consulted shape-shifting